meeting to order at 5:30. Any adjustments to the agenda?
No.
All right. Approval of minutes for November 6th.
I move that we approve the minutes for November 6th.
And I second that.
Been moved and seconded to approve the minutes of November 6th. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Public comment on items not on the agenda. You're not average public, so I'm guessing that's not why either of you are here.
I just have to note that I'm on call, so I have to pop up and I apologize.
Sounds good, no problem. Select board items, discussion and action. So, Yellow Barn Spotlight, Maria, that would be you first up. Welcome.
Thank you. I knew I'd be early on the agenda, but that's 30 seconds in. That's great. Thank you for the opportunity to come before you and give you an update on some activity with Yellow Barn and its particular interaction and impact with the town. So really what I'm here to talk about is Yellow Barn is in the process of acquiring the original Yellow House and Barn that was owned by David and Janet Wells, is currently owned by their estate. But we have a purchase and sale and are in the process of acquiring it with the purpose of restoring the property to its original mission, which was to be a year-round home for musicians from around the world to live together and rehearse and have interactions with the community. I think its original use with David and Janet Wells living there was mostly in the summer, that they would have young musicians come and perform or rehearse with them and then do concerts and so on in the big barn. I mean, in the Yellow Barn there. The intention with Yellow Barn in acquiring it is to very much have it be a year-round artist residency home, because as you know, I think we have 9 artist residencies aside from the summer that we're doing this year. So to be able to have artists come live there together, use the kitchen, our hope is to move our administrative offices there so that that's there permanently, and then to use the barn for rehearsals, workshops, inviting the community in to experience the process and the music, as was the case originally. The specific good news that I have to share that I just got formal notification of this morning, although I knew about it informally, is a grant that we got from the Preservation Trust of Vermont from the Robert Sincerbo Fund, which basically they're giving us money to prepare a condition assessment, to work with an architect who has been identified and secured and has agreed to do the work. So to look at the main house, the connecting pieces of property, the connecting rooms, which is where the administrative offices will be, and then to the barn separately. So to look at all of that, we had our wonderful fire chief come by and do a tour with Catherine Stefan, the executive director, and myself, I'm the managing director, to look through the space and begin to get a handle on the code work that's needed and everything that we needed to do to bring it up to safe and legal functioning levels. So we're pulling all these pieces together. I went to Grand Isle to the retreat that they have up there, the Preservation Trust of Vermont hosts, and I just have to say, there's so many organizations in this state that are so eager to help. The Vermont Arts Council Cultural Facilities Grant was there, and we're talking to them, USDA Rural Development, Division of Historic Preservation. There seem to be a lot of resources. This is designated as a historic property already. It's right downtown. It's close to our current big performance facility. And so there are many reasons that we're extremely excited to be breathing year-round life into the property. So that's pretty much what I wanted to update folks on. I think there's a lot of opportunity to get national funding involved in this, and in particular the National Endowment for the Arts. We've done, in my capacity with Next Stage, we did an Our Town joint project. When we're not using this for housing for our artists in residence, it has the potential to be a low-cost housing option for other partner organizations that may have housing needs for their artists in residence. And, you know, just a great resource to be using in collaboration with other organizations in town, and bringing economic benefit to those guests and audiences that would be engaged with us during the residencies, business in town, supporting local establishments. So not just the cultural piece, but the economic piece, which we're very cognizant of. So I'm encouraged by this grant and by all the good energy that seems to be naturally flowing towards this project. And I'll keep you updated when we are the official new owners of it, and as the work unfolds and the fundraising unfolds, and when we're actually in occupancy there.
Nice.
That's really exciting.
Yeah.
Good
I
work.
mean, just I think that Yellow Barn has a kind of a long, encompassing vision of its commitment to Putney and its desire to really establish its long-term presence and long-term roots. And this is really a very key kingpin of that whole plan. So.
And I assume, this is strictly my own curiosity, nothing you. I assume that the barn was at one time, and maybe still is, actually a performing space, or is that not the case?
It has been used for performance, and in fact last summer, Yellow Barn, celebrating its 50th anniversary, held a gala performance in there. It is, if you compare it to the current space that they use at the Big Barn, there are extensive backstage areas for multiple pianos and percussion instruments, and you know, the nature of the organization now is very different in terms of what it needs from a performance space, and you know, capacity and so on. So it's not envisioned to replace another performance space, but to be able to use it the way they did with the gala last summer, I think is very much in the picture.
Sure.
Any other questions?
And the intent is to keep using the Big Barn as it is?
The intent, this is very much in process, trying to secure the long-term ownership of Big Barn. Currently it's leased from the Mackenzie Family Foundation.
Yeah.
So there is a process underway to try to secure that situation, so I can't speak beyond
That's fine. Yeah.
beyond what's in process,
Yeah.
but that could well be the case.
Good. Good. Exciting.
Yes.
Look forward to a tour. What is the rough era, circa when? When was the building built? Do you know? roughly?
The new one or the old one?
No, the old.
When was it built? I think I have that paperwork. I think it was like 1820, right around then. They founded it in well, that's 1969, but it's I'm pretty sure 1821 maybe. I'm happy to check and submit that for official.
Yeah, just, I did.
But it's a, you know, it's a fantastic
Yeah.
property, and it's
Yeah.
so much in the heart of town. And you know, for me personally, having been through what I have with Next Stage, and you know, it feels that it's a very kind of gratifying
Yeah.
to be looking at the reinvigoration of this property to be really useful and active in the community in so many ways.
Good. Great. Well, thank you for coming.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you.
Good. All right. You're welcome to stay if you want, but of course you don't have to. Fire department draft budget discussion. Are you presenting a budget to us, Tom, or?
You have copies, yes?
Yeah.
Both the budget layout and then the explanatory narrative. As far as the budget goes, I can go line by, or line by line where there are changes. As far as the change in my salary is concerned, that was with some, and it's all in the explanatory narrative as well. With consulting with Karen and some suggestions that she gave me. That's where that increase comes from, but that is actually, a lot of that is replacing what is now comp time. So essentially, it would do away with the comp time, and that would transition into part of my salary.
So how does that work on a practical basis? I mean, what difference, what if any difference does that make in sort of how you function at the department, or does it?
As far as I function, no.
Well, just what time you spend there.
The reality is, and I've said this right along, the option for time off for us is so significant, we can't, and when I say we, I actually am talking about Brian and I.
Yeah,
We can't take all of it.
yeah,
So that the comp time, it just sits there at 80 hours a year,
yeah.
and it just continues to, it doesn't build, but it just rolls, essentially. And nothing ever happens.
Yeah.
And they're not.
So instead of getting that 80 hours of comp time that you can't use, that will now be part of the salary.
Salary, yeah.
And so
Right.
you're getting compensated for
Correct.
essentially replaced. Okay,
We
that's
do
fine.
away with the comp time, because they're not even able to take vacation time, because they're using the comp time first. So those 80 hours would be translated into an hourly, which would be built into their salary, because they're both salary
Okay.
as well. And right now, when they have overtime in a week,
That shows as comp time.
It shows
It builds as comp time.
it builds as comp time,
Right.
but it builds at 1.5. So,
Because it's overtime.
correct.
And remind me, vacation time does roll over year to year or not?
Just-
Comp time doesn't?
So you can only roll over a week
Okay.
of vacation. So, and right now it accrues at 1 day per month.
Yeah.
So you get up to 2 weeks and then you gotta wait to that next benchmark.
Yeah.
But you can only roll over 1 week a year. So,
And you can't then roll that again additionally the following year.
1 week at a time.
Right,
That's it.
exactly.
Yeah,
Per year.
so
Okay.
if they're not using it, they're not accruing
Over
it.
time, right, yeah,
So
yeah.
it doesn't make sense to carry that compensation for a salaried person. Hourly is a little different. They don't get comp time, they get paid time and a half,
Right.
an hourly person.
Right.
Next line that needs to be adjusted is our mutual aid assessment. That's our assessment for dispatching services. There's what is a 3% increase versus what we had initially, a previous draft budget showed a 5%. It was confirmed with us yesterday that it's going to be a 3% instead. So there's a little bit of savings that we got there. The next two lines are simply preparing for getting us in a decent position for the federal increase in minimum wage. So that's what those figures represent. The water and sewer increase, That's strictly due to an error on my part from last year, when I just didn't catch that the rates were gonna be increasing. So
Oh,
therefore,
sorry.
yeah, so therefore I didn't adjust the budget line for that. So now this year we'll take care of that. And that's it. So, in the big scheme of things, at the end of the day, our budget is, right in line with, as far as increases are concerned with, where we should be over the last, looking at things over the last couple of years.
Questions, comments? I'm wondering, the noticeable zero on here is the assistant fire chief salary. You don't technically have somebody in that position
There's not,
currently?
but
Is
that
that
presently,
correct?
that position's vacant.
Okay. And would you ideally fill that position if you could?
Once we get ourselves in a better position, member-wise, then yes.
Can I ask why you have to wait until you get into a better position member-wise before? Is it that you don't have somebody that would want to fill that role?
We need people on the trucks. I don't need another person riding around by themselves. That's all it comes down to.
Okay.
And the reality is there are two folks primarily that in my absence, they act in my place anyway. So I guess in all reality, to just throw out a title isn't necessary.
So Tom, the line fire EMS training changes from 4,800 to 28,500. Am I reading that right?
That was last year, yes.
Yes. Okay.
And there was a,
So this is current year.
Got it.
This is
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
already, but this is the budget that was approved last year for
this
in March
coming year.
at town meeting.
Got it.
And this is the proposed for
Got it.
next. But to remind us why that.
that change came about when we were authorized to begin paying our members not only for call hours, but also for training hours.
Got it. Okay.
And the money for that came from, essentially it was a wash from the year before that, and I don't remember the line items off the top of my head, I'd have to go back and look. Essentially it was a wash because we had budgeted for specific things that were done. So we split that money in last year, coming into last year's budget. So there wasn't
A savings
at the end of the
somewhere
day,
else offset.
exactly, yes.
Got it. Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
And again, looking at the proposed, for that line item, again, that's again getting ourselves in line, for the federal, minimum wage.
And do you know exactly what that will be already or not?
Well, again, we're preparing for the $15 minimum wage.
For 15?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what do you pay, what do we pay currently for on-call?
It's on a scale.
Okay. But
minimum-
the bottom of the scale will become 15.
That's correct.
By 2024.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Dam cleaning and miscellaneous. I'm just curious, somebody inquired of me the other day. Apparently there is money available to explore the outcome, the effects of removing old dams. And this person was under the impression that that dam does not serve any purpose for anybody in town.
Oh.
I said, I think it both supplies something to the mill as well as being our reservoir, is that correct?
Absolutely, the dam provides all of the processing water to Soundview Paper,
Okay.
to both mills. And it's our secondary firefighting water supply for the village. Oh, absolutely. If we were to lose that dam, we would be in significant trouble.
That's what I said.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure about the mill's usage of it. I was
Yeah.
pretty sure they still used a significant amount from
Yeah.
it, but I knew we used it as a reservoir.
No, that's all of their processing water.
And that just goes in, gets used essentially for cooling purposes and then gets expelled back in, or does that?
It does, it goes through, they have an in-house water treatment facility.
Right, and so it goes.
Or wastewater treatment facility.
Yeah.
So it goes through treatment as is necessary, and then it's discharged back into the brook.
Okay.
Do they contribute to the cleaning in any way?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yep, they definitely do. Yep, it's essentially whatever goes on, it's a 50-50 split between the town and the mill.
Karen, I think you and I had a conversation about your, I wouldn't say concern necessarily, but you're having noticed that you thought the electricity bill in the fire station was up with the mini splits, which we would have anticipated with the mini splits. I'm just wondering, we don't see a change in either our electricity or heat budget items. Does that make sense?
Is that the library?
We had a specific
Oh.
conversation about it at the fire department
Oh,
as
okay.
well.
Yeah.
But yes, we did talk about it for the library also.
The highway department is my concern
Okay.
with fuel and, heat and electricity.
Even from 2 years ago budget, so this 3,700 last year would have reflected usage by the mini splits, but the year previous it wouldn't have, correct?
Right.
So I'm just, are you pretty confident that this number is accurate?
It will be right in the ballpark.
Okay.
Yep.
And is there an explanation for why it didn't change from 19 to 20? Were we already anticipating the mini splits in
Yes.
19 and we put it in there? I can't remember.
Chip was still here when we put it in the budget.
Put that number in the budget, but we
Yes.
wouldn't have used that much in 2019, I don't think.
What we
Because the
were-
mini splits weren't on, oh, maybe they were online for,
They
yeah,
were,
okay,
yes.
yeah, sorry, I'm misspeaking
Yeah.
about that. Okay,
I can validate that though by running a report.
just make sure,
Yeah.
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 And, what one would hope that our oil usage, which presumably is listed under heat, would actually have decreased.
Yeah, we had a problem last year, that I didn't catch, it wasn't caught until partway through the heating season, we weren't even halfway through yet, but,
Sort of a control problem.
well, there was a control problem, but we also had air in the lines,
Right.
so unfortunately, the burner was running
But it wasn't.
constantly,
Yeah,
not constantly, but a lot.
more than-
So
Yeah.
before we realized, wait a minute, something's wrong here, and figured it out, we had gone through a little more oil. So that being done away with, that issue not being a problem any longer, this year we should see that
We hope
drop,
number
yes.
will be lower.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, again, it all depends too on how many times we're in and out.
Right.
You know, that's the big kicker, is how many times
Open the door.
the doors are opening up and closing. But,
And we should be able to have comparison to, like,
Now that the mini
Yeah,
splits have been
yes,
running for a
yes.
year. Yeah, I mean, this will be the second year
right,
that they were, I mean, this winter will be the second winter
Yes.
that they're running.
Yes.
that's
Yeah.
right.
But last year, we had both that glitch and it was the first
Yes.
time the mini
Right.
splits were online,
Yeah.
so, okay. Good. I don't think, Tom, that this reflects, and not that it should, I don't know how this would work, but I don't think in this budget is reflected the money that you brought in from that grant. Is that correct? Is that just sort of a separate, it's sort of its own budget?
Right.
Okay.
And essentially, that will all be done, all be completed by
Is
the
it,
end
oh,
of,
that's here, oh, sorry.
yeah, it's on the
by the end
second.
of July.
Sorry, I didn't see that we had that on here. Yeah,
So that wouldn't be there.
right, okay, sorry, I didn't see that was there, yeah. Good.
And you expect that to be completed by when? I'm sorry, I missed
It definitely will be done, will be completed by the end of July.
Great.
It'll be within this fiscal year. I'm hoping to have it all done by March. I hope.
So you do have some tools that you already,
Yes, our new hydraulic tools are in.
yeah.
We've received the training on them and they're in service.
There you go.
I've noticed a couple vehicles chopped up back there.
Yeah, those were, believe it or not, from when we were testing them. Just trying the different,
Practice.
yeah, trying to sample the different tools.
You pretty happy with them?
Yes, yep.
And
Yeah.
what happens to the old set? Do we have it back up?
The smaller set actually went to the highway garage. It's the small tool and the small pump.
Yeah.
Brian asked if they could have it, he's got use for it. And then our larger spreader and cutter and the large pump, we're actually gonna sell to Vernon Fire Department. That'll be their first set. So.
All right. Anything else?
I've got a few more things.
Yep.
Just real quick, as far as capital is concerned, one of these might seem like it's out of my wheelhouse, which technically it is, but looking at things from the emergency management side of things, I took the liberty of looking at stationary generators to serve both the wastewater plant and the water.
Sorry, we don't have this, is this on
No,
here?
this is, no, it's not on there, no. For one generator to serve the wastewater treatment plant and the second generator to serve the water pump house
On Sand Hill?
on Sand Hill
Yeah.
and the water system. So as far as the water system's concerned, that pump house has never had a generator, standby generator. One had never been proposed prior to this. But in today's world, with what we know and what the power company definitely is telling us will happen with loss of power for extended amount of times, or extended amount of times, and becoming more frequent, we really need to have some standby power for the water system. I've talked with Joe. We've had one contractor come in and take a look at things, start to give us some pricing for both facilities. And without standby power, when the power leaves, we don't have any water for our water
In
system.
the village.
Right, the only thing that we have is what's in the storage tank. And depending upon occupancy of primarily the college, because that drives a lot of what happens with the water system and the fluctuation in water levels, then we'll go through water fast, and we won't be making it up, and we lose all of our water for fire protection
And
through the municipal system.
if the storage tank is depleted.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yep.
And as it is now, the pressure in town is gravity.
Right, correct, out of the
So
storage
we
tank.
pump from the pump house up to the storage facility and then it gravity.
Yeah, and then gravity feeds from
So
the
we
tank.
don't need generation in order to generate pressure.
No.
There, we need power to
Right.
pump.
Yep,
run the pump
exactly.
to keep the
Yep,
storage facility.
exactly.
Okay.
So, and then obviously the wastewater facility, Joe was pretty ecstatic about both possibilities, but he was very happy to see that some thought is being put into that, to have an actual standby generator. A standby generator, during the last plant upgrade, a standby generator was in the budget, and it got cut for whatever the reason, doesn't matter, save some money. A plug-in, if you will, was installed with a panel to power a portion of the plant only after a generator is brought in.
So they don't have one.
They don't have one on site. It would have to be brought in if they could find one when they needed one. And the likelihood of that is pretty nil.
If
exactly.
Exactly, right.
And what?
So total for both locations, just barely over $60,000. Karen's got the actual numbers, but it's $60,060 for both facilities.
How, just out of curiosity, kilowatt on those guys, do you know?
No. Oh, yes, yep, right there. The one for the wastewater plant is 48 kW, and the one for the water is 25 kW. Both of them are three-phase generators.
Okay. Oh.
Could there be grant funding for that?
Not that I'm aware of, but we would certainly look into
Yeah,
it.
that's a good idea to explore that.
Yeah.
Those are big generators.
Yeah.
All right.
And-
I would just recommend, unless this goes into our sewer and water budget, I would recommend that we explore, a system like that should have at least annual, if not more, maintenance, so we should just be aware of that as far as a budgetary item. What the maintenance costs of cycling those and doing them up, et cetera.
And it's
Those
not
would be
that-
propane or diesel, you're thinking?
Propane.
Propane.
Yeah.
Yeah, for the
Yeah.
propane ones, it's not.
They're not that, it's not that significant at all.
But it has to be tested and it has to be run.
Yeah, they're tested
They're self-
automatically.
Right, self,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and then it's just no different than a vehicle. Essentially, you're just changing the oil once a year and that's it,
Yeah.
pretty much.
I wish I only had to change the oil on my vehicle once a year.
Any other questions on that? Okay, the second thing is, I'm back this year after the last 2 years, to talk about hopefully, getting in the capital budget, our funding for our, exhaust evacuation system down at the firehouse. 2 years ago, it just wasn't the time, so to speak. Last year, we wanted to take a look to see if there was some grant money, if you recall. And I found out over the last year, there's no grant money available. I've talked with VLCT, I've talked with the government as far as the possibility of another AFG grant. If that had been a possibility, I would have applied for it this past year. The reality is that those options don't exist. Through an AFG grant, we missed their cutoff point by 1 year. Our building is 1 year too new. So there's no wiggle room with that.
And what does AFG stand for?
Assistance to Firefighters Grants, federal grants. And this is another thing that when the station was built in 2005, the cost for a system was included originally, and then that's one of the two bigger things, if you will, that got cut, just to save. So obviously it's necessary. We can prove things out if you folks at any time want to come down and take a look. We actually did in-house just our own little test. We took one of our bunker coats, washed it twice, it was perfectly clean. We left it intentionally on the apparatus floor for 4 months. And when we washed it after that, just to see what it actually would be collecting, I've got a sample of the water out of the first rinse cycle, and it'll turn your stomach. So when you look at it, all that was exposed to obviously was diesel exhaust, vehicle exhaust. So when we look at that and knowing that the existing system we have just doesn't work, we've tested that too many times with our CO meters, and just running anything in that building, even with the fans on, it doesn't purge anything. And
What is the existing system? Just
all it is manually operated fans, an intake fan on one wall, exhaust ports on the other, and it doesn't work. So within all that, the anticipated cost would be $103,000. total. Within that, since we house one of the Vermont State Hazmat response trucks, I spoke with the hazmat chief and asked if the funding, if we did secure the funding, if they would be willing to pay for their drop, which would be about $13,000 to $14,000, because we've got a total of 8 drops. And they said, they haven't confirmed it yet, but he said we can absolutely work something out.
The system that would like to put in, are there any other systems? Have you explored all the different systems
Yes.
that might work? And
Yeah, we have.
And-
And this system is the most practical and really works the best. There are other systems, and what this system is it's actually an exhaust fan piped to a series of ductwork. A series of rails are in place with hose drops that actually come down to the exhaust location on each truck. The trucks have sensors in them. All of that's included in this. When the vehicles are turned on, it automatically sends a signal to the fan turns on, the vehicle starts, it's already exhausting all the vehicle exhaust to the outside. There are filters in place, so it's filtered before it gets to the exterior. Shuts off automatically, so on and so forth.
And you said 8 drops?
8 drops, yep.
So 1 in the maintenance bay?
One in the back bay, and then the other 7 are out in the front bays.
Do the filters reduce the amount of carbon you're putting
Yes,
back?
yes.
Nice.
there'd be some maintenance on cleaning those too.
Yeah,
Is that figured into this?
we'll be able to do in-house. It's not a dramatic
Gotcha.
thing at all.
Get it.
And that cost is turnkey. Everything's installed and ready to go.
Sounds good. So, what would that would go into the capital budget?
Capital,
Okay,
yeah.
so both of those items, or all 3 of those, the 2 generators and the exhaust system would all go into capital budget. Okay.
Are we required by law to put in an exhaust system that keeps the air clean in that building? Do we need to do that, or are we just doing this because it's the right thing to do? Is there some code that we have to meet?
Honestly, I can't answer that.
Okay.
As
I was just
far
curious.
as far as the fire prevention side of things, that side of things, no. At the end of the day, it's just the right thing to do.
I hear you, I'd love one in my shop.
I mean, if we take a look at the example that, in the test internally that we did, if you will, that bunker coat, that's what all of our guys are wearing every day. So, if they're already taking gear out of their lockers that's contaminated, that's not doing anybody any good.
In their masks.
Yeah, that's not doing anybody any good. Plus, at the end of the day, the place is filthy. So,
Alright,
The reason I asked was if we had to do that, if there was some code and we had to do it, I just want to make sure the system that you're proposing actually meets the standards of that code, but I didn't know. So that's what I was asking.
and it would.
Right.
It would, it's based on, this is all NFPA compliant,
Got it.
so.
Okay.
And just one other thing,
One more.
one more. And this is a concept that all of us at the department are, just wanting you to look at. Back 6 months ago-ish, a group of us started to put together, in anticipation of the engine one's replacement in 4 years, we put together a group of folks who started to put together specs for a new engine. Because there are gonna be some changes in the way we do things and the way, how the trucks need to function. So they started to put the specs together. Within that process, naturally, you have some conversations with different dealers, apparatus dealers. And what we started to recognize right off the bat was the cost of a new truck is gonna be much greater than this town has ever seen. It's greater than anybody's ever seen, no matter where you are. But in this town, certainly, historically, we've been looking anywhere at financing $230,000 to $280,000. At this point, with firm specs in place, the only direction we could go is on the decreasing side of things. With firm specs in place, we're looking at a cost to be $655,000.
And that,
That's for a truck today.
and that's not, other than some tweaking for your usage, it's not really a dramatically, I mean, it's not twice as fancy a truck.
No,
It's just.
No, again, historically-
It's essentially replacement cost for what you need.
right. Again,
Slightly
historically,
modified.
Putney's trucks have always been utilitarian.
Right.
They're not showpieces.
And this would be the case, that would be the case with
Absolutely,
this.
absolutely correct. There's no,
Yeah.
this is no frills at all. So what's driving the cost? Especially when, again, we're historically, we're in the 230 to 280 range.
Sorry to interrupt. Historically, how long ago was the last time we purchased?
Last
one
truck
for
was
that
2000, last new truck was 2006, which is the truck that we will be replacing in 4 years, due for the replacement in 4 years.
Yeah.
However, we did refurb engine 2
Right.
5 years ago, so that won't be due for replacement for another 15 years. So we started to think amongst ourselves, and the first thought was that there's no way, this is absolutely ridiculous. And then after we came back down a little bit, and just started to think a little, we started to get some numbers for the purchase of our existing engine that this truck would replace, at between $90,000 and $100,000, which our dealer would help us to get that. So, and after 2000, we're in 2019, we're coming into 20, after 21, that value that's still there in the truck is gonna start to decrease dramatically. So our thought process is, would it be worth seriously considering replacing that engine early, with also the understanding that I didn't mention yet. Our goal is to build, would be, whether it's now or whether it's in 4 years, to build this truck heavy, just like we did with engine 2. Josh, you'll remember when that was purchased. That truck was, the truck was built heavy, so at 20 years, we were able to take advantage of what that truck was and do a refurb on it and run it another 20 years with absolutely no hesitation at all whatsoever. That's gonna be our goal with this truck as well, and as we've laid things out, when we replace engine 2 down the road, the goal's gonna be the same thing with that. So whether we replace that truck now, early, take advantage of the value that we've got in the existing truck, or if we just say nope and put it off. So if we do that, if we put it off, at a minimum, we're looking at a 3% per year increase in the cost. So when we finally get to that point, the cost would be at a minimum $760,000. So if we did things early, we would save a minimum of $105,000.
And we'd have a better trade-in.
Yes.
Now, the other question, you and I already had this conversation, the other question I asked you then, and I'm just for the record, would we consider, if so, why or why not, refurbishing the existing engine that we have?
The answer to that is no. The reason is when that engine was bought, and again, during the 2003 to 2006 timeframe, there was a lot going on in town. We had the one wastewater plant upgrade. We were just coming off the water system. We were just coming off the fire station, the new fire station being built. And at the time, the select board, they knew we needed that new truck.
And the library.
And the library too, absolutely, yep. The select board at the time knew we needed to replace engine one, our old one. That had been put off for 5 or 6 years. And then there was just no more putting off. So we're collectively backed into a corner, and the select board said, you've got this much money. So at that time, instead of speccing the truck the way we typically had and would have and are now, we got a truck based on this limited amount of money. So the truck just won't stand a refurb. It's constructed way too light. The motor's way too small. It just wouldn't. It certainly would not be worth the money putting into it. That would be throwing money away.
So we've made the last payment on that engine, correct? So the engine's paid for. The fire department building will be paid for in 2026.
And remind me, Tom, I know this was also part of our conversation, but the time frame for doing this, would we need to be, in order for us to realize the maximum value on trade-in, would we need to be having this as an article this coming March? Or would we be looking out a year from then?
Well, to gain the maximum, yes.
Right.
Yep.
Has the dealer given you any idea how much less it would be if it was another year?
As the market is right now, they've said we could do, they could just shy of guarantee us. They would be very comfortable in us realizing that amount of money for that truck for this coming year and the following.
And you said
Again, based upon the market. And the market being what, if all of a sudden the market's flooded with those trucks, that kind of truck, type of truck, then the value's gonna drop dramatically.
So they can't predict that.
Right.
How long would it take to build the new truck?
Just shy of a year.
Okay. So,
And you've
No.
already done all the spec work, I mean, you have, do
Yes,
you have basically as-built drawings, I mean, are you?
No, we're not as
You
built.
haven't gotten that
No,
far.
no. We had some initially, but we made some changes because the truck was too tall and too long. So we've made some changes. But again, we don't have those right now, no.
And you said they would guarantee what, 90 or 100,000?
Between 90 and 100.
Between 90.
I want to shy away from using the word guarantee.
Sure.
That was what they were very comfortable with.
Based on the current market.
Yeah, exactly.
And so the what did you say,
655.
And so.
That would be
take
the-
100 off of that.
Exactly. So we would actually, in theory, be financing 555
Instead of 7.
instead
whatever.
of, yeah. Now that 655, again, everything will go out to bid. Should the time come, everything goes out, we'll go out to bid. And we may find something different. But dealing with E1, who has been our primary dealer since '92, that 655 includes an incentive, a purchase incentive from E1. Because we're an all E1 department, we get a several tens of thousands of dollars incentive taken off, where that wouldn't come into play anywhere else. So again, even if we, and certainly wide open for discussion, but if we said, well, let's put it off a year, again, that's gonna be a minimum of 3% increase at a minimum.
To the 655
Right.
and the loss to the trade-in,
Yeah,
depending on
right.
what the market's doing.
Right.
Right, and that
And
3%, I
certainly
mean,
as we move out beyond 2021, then we're talking potentially getting $50,000 for the truck.
Right.
And the cost having gone up even more, so.
Right, and that 3%, I mean, I was sort of having a hard time getting from what you said of getting from 650 to 760 if it were, but
That's
3% of exactly,
Right.
3% of 650 is, 19,500
Yeah,
or
so-
whatever it
yeah.
is. And then we pay an additional 3% on that
Exactly.
19,500 that following year.
So I
it
started to say, what's driving the cost of these?
jumps up.
And what we're being told by the 3 vendor reps that we've spoken with is the tariffs. And that's it. Now, and I can't, and I've said to them point blank, is that for real? Or is that because you can? And they said it's for real. So we've got it. Exactly, exactly. And you look at a truck, personally, I don't think there's an engine on the planet that's worth $655,000. But it is what it is. That's where things are at now. And then we pose the question to each of the reps. Once the tariffs are done and things return to some sort of normalcy, you don't have to worry about the tariffs anymore. Your costs are going to come down, right? Absolutely not. So it's where we're at. And again, I've had this talk with Karen as we were going through this. At some point, there's got to be a ceiling, but it doesn't seem as though we're anywhere close to reaching it yet. I mean, the price of these things is just going crazy.
So, I'm not advocating for this at all, but if we were to say to you, as the select board did in 2005 or whatever it was, no, we don't want to spend $650,000, you have X amount to spend, what would X amount be in order for you to have a truck in there that wasn't what you wanted, but we could have a truck in there? I mean, for $450,000, could we get a light duty truck or not?
Again, we've already proven it, and I understand exactly what you're saying. I get it.
Strictly a hypothetical. Yeah.
At the end of the day, not only have we proven it over the last, since 2006 with this truck,
Yeah.
we had proven it several times in the past as well, the department had, to cheap things out, same thing with the highway department.
Yeah.
To cheap things out, it's attractive and it might be good on the front end.
What do you pay for it?
On the back end,
Yeah.
it doesn't do anybody any good and it's junk.
Yeah.
So how much is this truck, this one, that wasn't the truck you wanted, the one you're using now, cost in excess during this period of time compared to the one you would have liked to have had in maintenance and repairs? And how is it? Has it not served you? Is it broken all the time? How is it that you can prove that out? That my truck isn't worth buying right up front?
To cheap it out?
Yeah, you're saying that
Yep.
you have proven over time that
Yep,
doing that isn't.
because everything-
Explain that to me.
Everything is light. The chassis is light, the transmission's light, the motor's light.
So it breaks, it doesn't work.
We, knock on wood, we haven't had any significant problems. We have had some electrical problems, that are at this point fixed. We've had some air problems. We had one transmission problem that is fixed and seems to be all right at this point. At the end of the day, it's just a matter of time before the next little thing.
So-
And granted, all vehicles have problems, especially whether it's a dump truck
There's anybody
or,
in this room that gets
Right,
that.
exactly.
I get it, gets that.
right.
But, so you're saying that really it's not cost effective because it's not worth anything now, and it would be worth a lot more
Exactly.
now had you built it right. But it's not that
And
it's
it-
not working, and it's not that it's breaking all the time.
Right,
Okay.
and at this point, if we had built the truck the way we would have, at this point, we wouldn't be talking about a new truck. We'd be talking about a refurb.
And how much would a refurb be? I have no idea.
If we were to, well, engine, when we refurbed engine 2, that was 130.
Okay, so,
And we did that in 2015, is that right?
It was 5 years ago.
And that was in 1992, that's a
That's a
1992.
Yep, yep.
So we got 20 plus years out of it.
And refurbed it,
for
and it's
130,
still going
we should
fine.
get another 20 out.
got it.
Yep.
So that could be happening now had we not. had
Exactly, and
this
now,
in 2000.
my best educated guess would be if we were to refurb, well, in 4 years, we'd be doing a refurb for 200, 210.
250, yeah.
Okay.
But again, that truck, because, and again, hindsight, it is what it is, and the reasons were what they were, but at the end of the day, because that truck was built the way it was, it got us through. But to invest that kind of money into refurbing it, it just, it doesn't make sense.
So basically, I think I'm hearing you saying if it was the truck that you wanted it to be at this point, we could double its life for a fifth of the expense that we're gonna
Absolutely.
spend
Yep.
to buy the new.
And again, the intent would be whether a new engine comes into play this year or in 4 years, the intent will be to have that truck built heavy so that in 20 years it's refurbed and it goes another 20-ish.
And that question I asked about, what could you get one for kind of thing, if it was 450, I would guess if the reality is that one of the largest driving factors is raw material, i.e. things that have a tariff on them.
Right, exactly.
That base cost is already that much higher
Right.
anyway.
Right, yeah.
For the non-vehicular savvy people in the room, when you're talking light and heavy, I assume that means like the quality of the materials?
Yeah, I mean,
used?
essentially, what's a good way to think of it? How much abuse they can take. So when your frame rails are lighter, your axles are lighter, your transmission's lighter, the motor's lighter, all those things get lightened up, which saves a considerable amount of money on the front end. But at the end of the day, they get beat.
Piecing it out.
Yeah,
And then when you're piecing it out, it's also out of duty pretty regularly.
Right.
Because of that.
yeah.
I would say sort of a reasonable layman's comparison probably would be if you needed an F-350, which is a heavy-duty Ford pickup truck, and you purchased a 150 and used it like you would use a 350. I mean, they're different vehicles, but it's sort of a similar comparison that if you're trying to work it like that heavier vehicle, the lighter vehicle will probably do it for a period of time,
Right.
but at the end of period of time, it's gonna be beat and not worth much because you've overworked it.
Makes sense.
I have a question. So people trade these in, so they're out there available to buy. Are there any used heavy-duty fire trucks that we could buy?
Very likely not. The departments that build their trucks intentionally spec their trucks heavy. They run them until they can't run anymore.
So you're only gonna buy light trucks?
Right. Right. And then the other side of it too, to be absolutely honest, is like with this truck now, we're making it work. As far as equipment we're carrying, hose lines that we're carrying, but it certainly isn't anywhere near where it should be in order to allow us to be as efficient as we can be. And certainly in today's world of running with very, very few numbers of people, we need to be as efficient as we can be in everything. So even though we're making it work and so on and so forth, if we were to buy a used truck, a used engine, then we wouldn't have on it very likely what we need.
So
You
the
probably have
cost,
to rebuild it.
What's that? Well, yeah, you'd have to,
rebuild it
right,
quickly.
and
right,
you'd have to restart it, and the cost of that would be added to buying it.
Right.
And then you'd end up with a used truck.
right. Yeah, again, if you could find one that's,
Right,
so that we're comparing apples to apples.
right.
And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but we have purchased used trucks in the past, I mean, for example, our ladder truck.
ladder, yeah.
We bought
Yeah.
used, but, you know, as engine one, it's our primary first engine out the
Right.
door. It's the
Right.
one that's gonna
And-
get
and
the usage. You
One of
know,
the
it's
first
one we
things that
really
the group
depend
of
on.
folks did when we got together was look at our trucks and say, let's be realistic about things with them, and what are we actually gonna do? And the reality is what we all came up with, and it makes a great deal of sense, is our two engines, those are gonna be replaced new refurb at 20 and replace at 40.
Right.
The tanker, we're gonna run that into the ground.
Right.
There's no reason to do anything with that. It works fine, we're keeping it going. And it's not like it's going out all the time. When it does go out, it does its job, and we bring it back. And in the ladder, same thing. We will never, the town of Putney, unless something dramatic happens, I hope it never does, and the insurance company buys us a new one, this town will never have a brand new ladder. I mean,
We just don't use it enough to make it practical to look at that.
right. Can this town justify having an aerial? Absolutely. Does it have to be a new one? No. So, like when we bought this one, when our previous one failed its inspection and test, this one cost us $20,000.
Right.
So,
And
and
it's a truck.
it's fine. It's fine for what we need and what we do, absolutely. And then the other smaller vehicles, those are just as we need them, because they're relatively expensive, especially buying them off state bid.
And I think did we buy that ladder through DeSorcy also? We did, didn't we?
No, that was through,
Oh, it was-
Minuteman Fire Apparatus.
And there was a connection because of somebody who was on the department.
Correct, yep,
That's
yep.
right, yeah.
Yep,
We got a good deal on it, but.
absolutely. There were a lot of favors done for us that we had no idea about until after the fact.
Yeah.
So, yeah, to put it in a comparison with what we were seeing in the periodicals at that time, the same exact identical truck. We're advertised anywhere $160,000, $180,000. And again, there were some huge favors done on our behalf behind the scenes that we didn't know about until after the fact, that allowed us to get it for what we did, so. So again, just to throw it on the table, see,
I would say, Tom, it's probably worth your time to do a little bit of, and this is probably working with Karen, to do a little bit of number crunching, to think about whether we should be even looking at it this coming March, or whether we should be thinking a year out. And you know, what the numbers, I know it would be a certain amount of speculation. You know, the other question is, I mean, my feeling would be, if nothing else, we should probably be talking about this at town meeting this year, preparing people for the fact that they're gonna be looking at a number like that a year down the road. But even with that 3% in a year, you've gone from 650 to 675. So,
Right.
you know, it would be worth having that conversation, just to think about whether we should.
well, I think, I'm coming back on the 11th, is that right? Of December?
Yeah, because you're gone on the 4th.
Yeah, okay, so
Well,
we
the
can,
11th's tentative right now.
okay,
The 18th's are regular.
okay, all right, so yeah, either way,
Yep.
however it works out, we can have
Go for
some,
the discussion.
a little bit more information on it.
Good.
Thank you, Tom.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thanks,
Anything
Tom.
else? Okay.
Bye,
All right.
Maria.
Thanks, Maria.
Thank you
See
for
ya.
coming in.
All right, that was quick and easy, so let's.
Time's up.
Yeah, exactly. Unless it's gonna fall asleep over there pretty soon. All right, so thank goodness the highway department head isn't here, otherwise we could make the next one last as long. Highway department draft budget discussion.
So in front of you is the budget draft. I don't have a whole lot to say about it right now. We won't be going after any structures grant. And so we're not looking at any big projects for '21.
And is there a reason for that? Is that because of a cycle, or?
No, well, it is, sometimes.
Paving, I know it's a cycle.
Right.
Yeah,
So we're not going after a paving grant either,
right.
but we did put 100,000 into the budget.
For paving.
Yes.
But we're not going for state
yeah,
money.
Small,
Yeah,
small projects.
yeah.
But structures grant, there is a cycle, but we're encouraged to apply, because if a town's not ready, they'll go to another town.
Right, yeah.
So, but Brian has a lot to do, and he's expressed, and I've asked him more than once.
Take a year off.
He wants to take a year off, get caught up with some projects, and with all the ditching that's going on too. So we have a grants and aid award already that he needs to do within a year. And he's looking at Holland Hill for that. But,
And that's primarily purchase of material, correct?
yeah, that and doing the actual labor,
It-
ditching.
But that's but the grant is for labor also? I thought the
Yeah.
grant was just for material.
Well, we can do in-kind.
Right, so that's
So-
where it comes in for
Yeah,
us.
so he's
Yeah,
gonna utilize that grant for
Yeah.
the materials
yeah,
and whatever else.
because we maximize, if we do our
Yes.
in-kind in labor, we maximize the amount of material we can purchase
Correct.
through the grant.
Correct. So the only thing I want to comment on this budget is medical insurance, and it's going to be across the board. The general fund is going to be impacted as well as the library. Medical insurances have gone up. And what else did I want to say about that?
And the reason that's in here and not in the fire department budget is because we're highway in general and the fire department falls in the general.
Right. So medical insurance gone up. Wages, or we're looking at wages because of the $15 an hour that will be probably in place by 2024. Also, I want to look at other towns and see what their highway department is actually making hourly.
Yeah.
So equipment operators are, especially like a grader operator, so they're not at $19 an hour, they're a bit higher. So I think it's worth doing some research and coming back to the board with a proposal for the highway department. And I think what's gonna save that budget is we're carrying an extra guy. We've been carrying a person for 2 years in the budget at $15 an hour plus full benefits for family plan. That number is $58,000 for medical. No, for salary and medical.
For that additional
And
person.
for that additional person that we've been carrying for 2 years.
And he hasn't got.
That person who we don't have.
Correct.
The empty spot we have.
Correct. So I had a discussion with Brian and I said, let's look at this differently. We'll reevaluate his guys now, try to readjust, and if we can utilize that $58,000, and I don't see us using all of that. To get the
Certainly
guys,
not in our first year.
to get this department in line with other smaller towns.
Yeah,
So I will come back to the board with those numbers.
and not that this would be the criteria that we base it on, but are we hearing dissatisfaction with the
No.
salaries we're paying? Yeah,
No, we're not.
Right.
But if they're approached by another town.
right, and they're paying $2 or
And-
$3 more an hour.
And we
Yeah.
got somebody that's running a loader and a
Right.
backhoe and
Right.
driving a dump truck. They all
Yeah.
have CDL licenses, so any of them can go anywhere.
Right.
And so I think we need to be fair. And VLCT does this compensation report with, with the towns that participate. So I will be looking at that.
Has Brian said why he hasn't hired another person, he hasn't found anyone he'd like to? We talked about him trying to get another person to try to take some of the pressure off of him and
Yeah,
all of that. And I was wondering, I haven't talked to him.
We had 3 applicants and they didn't fit what he was looking for.
Just 3.
Yeah.
And that was after posting it.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, we put it in the paper and, what he does though, in the wintertime, he hires 2 part-time people to plow. And one has a CDL, the other one doesn't, which means he would be in the sidewalk tractor or the one-ton.
Right.
And that's been working. I know Lenny will be going out in February for a little bit. Brian's hoping it's only a week, but it could be a little more than that. So we'll see what happens.
Well, the reason I was asking is if we use this money to realign stuff and then we have to get another person, then that will affect the budget.
It may not, because if I do it appropriately, we may be able to carry a little bit
Okay.
of reserve, but I basically told Brian, I said, we're not gonna carry that guy if we're not gonna hire somebody. It doesn't make sense.
Right.
Right, no, I mean, if we had to look to find that money, if just the right person came along, that would be a different scenario.
Right.
But to have that line item and not use it.
Yeah, that's been the last 2 years,
Yeah.
so. We'll try something different, and I told him, I said, if you hire somebody and we're short that year in the budget, we can justify it.
Okay.
So,
Great.
I also want to add that I think that trying to hire people through the paper, I think that I'm not at all surprised you only got 3.
It
It's
wasn't just through the paper,
Yeah.
but,
right.
I mean, you posted on the Muni site, et cetera, I would assume.
It was on our
Sure.
website, and I think I put it on iPutney too, I can't remember. But Brian does a lot of talking, so he knows people. And, you know, the one person he did want actually was a mechanic,
Mhm.
but he ended up taking the job over in New Hampshire,
Yeah.
so.
It's a really competitive market out there right now.
It is, yeah.
And I know we opened our shelter 2 weeks late because it was hard to find staff.
Yeah,
And I would encourage that we diversify the way we look for staff when we're looking, because that's not how people are looking for jobs anymore. So it's.
I know, and I remember your comment, and I did take that into consideration, so I think the next time we'll, you know, take all approaches, all avenues, and,
Yeah, I think you'll find you have a higher success rate
yeah.
of at least getting applicants.
Or
I
at least
don't know if you'll
applicants,
get,
right,
if you'll get the
exactly.
right applicant, but I think you'll have a higher success rate of
Right.
pulling
Have
people
this
in.
discussion
Yeah.
with everybody who's trying to find someone to
Yeah.
work,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah.
Just any field,
Yeah.
find anybody who's good.
Yeah, and highway department too is a little different, because you like to have them either in town
Uh-huh.
or close.
Or reasonably close.
Yes.
Or willing to move if they're,
Right,
if they're
right.
not.
So, so those are the things with the,
And so, you may have said this and I missed it, but is there any reason we feel less urgency about having another person? Or it's just the reality that we're accepting the fact that we're not gonna find that person?
Right.
Or that we haven't yet found that person?
we
I
haven't
mean,
yet found,
I guess, based on what Laura's saying, you know, should we keep that money in the budget for the moment and look further? And you know, again, as Laura accurately pointed out, we'd probably get more applicants. Would we actually get somebody? Who knows?
Right.
But, you know, is there a reason we're deciding we don't need that person?
I think eventually we're gonna need,
I mean, we've
That
needed
person.
that person for a
We have.
while,
Yes.
in reality.
yes, yep. Let me look at the budget and I'll talk to Brian and we'll see what,
And it might be worth taking, and I don't, you know, I mean, other than sort of the obvious big name ones, which are a much broader net, I don't know what other methods people are using around here, but would it be worth advertising one more time, seeing whether we find somebody, and if we don't, then decide whether we want to take that number off the table? And, you know,
I would leave
this is
that
not, this is up to
Brian.
you and Brian,
Yeah.
really. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
I would
not-
leave that
it's
up
not-
to Brian
yeah.
at this point,
Yeah,
because he's already talked to Pat and Andrew.
about this winter.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. But that only puts us through this winter, and that's already in last year's budget, so when we're looking a year out,
Yeah.
I think it would be worth, I mean, that's,
Yeah.
not that Brian's not aware of that, but it might be
Right.
worth reminding him that, you know, really, we're not talking about urgency right now, we're
Right.
talking about a year from now, is
Yeah.
it gonna be that much or more urgent? I don't
Yeah.
know.
So I'll be looking at that with him. Let's see, what else do I want to mention with this? Minimum wage increase. Yeah, so the minimum wage increase as of January 1st is going to be what, 10.96?
1096.
Yeah. So I expect that we're going to be seeing that every year till we get to 2024, where it'll be
15.
15. Okay?
I mean, in the highway department, that's not really applicable, is that correct? Do we-
We're above that.
But, well, except it would be, anybody we were bringing in would have to be starting.
Well, see, this
We'd
is
have to
the
be
new
prepared for
person.
that. Right.
They're in the budget at $15 an hour. So we have one person not at $15 an hour right now.
Yeah,
So this is my goal, is to make sure these guys
or at least at that.
at a
Yeah.
reasonable rate.
Yeah.
So come 2024,
Right,
they're not looking at some guy that just got hired and, you
he's
know,
making the same
or
amount.
girl.
Person.
Yeah, person,
Exactly,
person.
yeah.
you know?
Right, no, it
And,
makes perfect sense.
And this is gonna be gradual too, I mean, it's just not gonna be like, you know,
We're so close though with having everybody at or over 15. We're not far off with,
I just said
One
one
person.
person.
yeah, with the one
yeah,
person, that's what I
yeah.
meant. But even he is very close in his hourly wage.
He is very close,
Yeah.
and then we have another guy that's barely over. Well, he's over by probably like $1, but,
But again, when you introduce new people at that base
Right.
wage.
The whole
Right.
scale moves up.
Yeah.
That's what you're trying
Yes.
to say.
Exactly.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
you have to be fair.
Right.
I mean, because the
And
guys have
as
been
we're-
on the
and-
department for a long time. And this is the other point I wanna make, is if we wanna keep those guys,
We
we
need,
gotta be fair.
Right, no.
no, and you know, that's part of the reason I was
Preaching to the
asking.
choir here,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I mean, that's part of the reason I was asking whether we were hearing about it, because if it were,
Yeah,
you know, and again,
Yeah.
not that that's the criteria for
Yeah.
changing it, I absolutely am
Yeah.
in favor of changing it regardless, but if
No.
we were,
no,
we might have to think about it.
all the performance evaluations were good. There was, I didn't hear any complaints. And, another reason why we do them every year, you know, so we can evaluate,
Right,
you know, their performance and adjust accordingly.
yeah,
So as you look into comparing other towns and how employees are being, road crew employees are being paid, would it be an increase sort of proportionally across the board or in relative to the person's skill and value to the town? And how do we look at that?
Yeah, that's what we're gonna be looking at.
Okay.
I mean, that's what we do now.
Yeah.
Right, so if things were structured in a way that felt relatively appropriate and then this happens, then the whole scale goes up by the percentage that seems appropriate? Or
Right.
would we look at each person again?
Well, I think we're gonna be looking at each person every year.
Yeah,
Okay, all right.
You know, and it
No,
depends,
no,
you know, are they all, you know, doing equal? They're not.
right.
They're not.
They're not.
That's what we talked about before.
Right.
No, and I mean, you know, as we talked about, I think we had that, in the context of that conversation we had before, we used a mechanic as an example.
Right.
You know, I mean.
Right.
And there's also personal choice amongst the people who are employees in town.
Correct.
Whether they
Correct.
want to make that decision to be that
Become
more
more
aggressive
valuable.
about pursuing
Right.
a higher
Right.
wage or not.
Right.
Yeah,
You know, if somebody doesn't, we should still be compensating them appropriately for what they're doing. But if they're
Exactly.
choosing not to be, you know, a grader operator or a backhoe operator or whatever,
right.
then that keeps their wage at a certain level, so.
The other thing too is, with the increase, at that point, we shouldn't have somebody that says, well, I don't wanna operate that piece of equipment.
Right. Everybody in the
Right.
department should be, well, yeah, yes, I think that's true. I mean, I think inevitably you will find sometimes, you know, and we have an example of this, of somebody who, even if they could do that, says, you know,
Right.
I'm just not really interested.
Yeah.
And, you know, we always need somebody who's the person who's gonna drive the truck, and that's really what they're gonna do.
Well, take
They
the
need to be
grader,
able to do plowing,
you know,
but,
yeah, so the grader operator,
Right.
you know, needs so many hours,
Right.
like 2,000 to 3,000 hours, you know, to be.
just to be competent.
Right, right.
Yeah.
So you don't wanna stick 3 different guys in that
Right.
grader.
Yeah,
You wanna focus on one person
right,
who's willing to learn it, and you get him proficient.
or her,
Or
in our
her.
case,
Yeah.
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 And to benefit the town, though, wouldn't it be wonderful if we had more than one? I mean, it would be really
Absolutely.
good.
No, I mean,
Yeah,
it
we
would,
do
it
have
would
a
be in
backup.
case something
Yeah,
happens. to
yeah,
We
that.
do have a
Yeah,
backup,
Yeah,
you know? so-
no, and I think that, I think that's more important with a less specialized piece of equipment, the grader probably being our single most specialized, but
Right.
for example, with the backhoe or the excavator or something
Or the
like
loader,
that,
yep.
having, you know, being
Yeah.
able to
Multiple
swap,
guys.
and we do to a certain extent,
Yeah.
but more is better.
Right.
Because then it doesn't limit who you can send to do what job, it also doesn't say, oh, we can't run the backhoe today because our only
Right.
operator
Right.
is in the grader.
right,
So,
absolutely,
Yeah.
how I feel about it.
Yeah,
You
and
should
the
be able to do
excavator
whatever
too
you need
is a
when you need to.
specialized machine, not everybody.
right,
runs
but
that
not,
one.
not, again, not so
Right.
much as I mean, the grader is really sort of unique in that
Yeah.
sense, but all of them, you know, it takes a long time to get good in those machines.
Yes.
It takes a lot of hours, and it's just straight up hours, so.
So in this budget, you're gonna see the gravel pit operating
I
expenses.
noticed that.
You're also,
Shocking.
you're also gonna see, the loan payment for the gravel pit. Alyssa and I are gonna verify our debt service list, which you have a copy, so I would encourage you to look through that in your spare time. Just to get a sense, because those numbers do plug into the budgets. I did reduce one of the line items for,
Sorry, just while we were on gravel pit, this is not a surprise to us.
no,
It's, right, it's just a reality.
So the-
But essentially, we're paying operation of the gravel pit instead of purchasing material.
right.
So,
So
yeah.
in that, and I don't know if there's a note there, but
Crushing 16,000, blasting reserve 18,000.
Yeah.
So that's what that 34 is coming from.
so that
Yeah.
18,000 is per year for the next 5 years when we
Right.
go to blast.
And then we'll blast, and
Yes.
then we restart. So
Right.
that's a reserve fund.
It's a
for that.
reserve fund, correct.
Yeah.
And then the crushing is in there. The only thing I need to check on is like permitting, because I might have to add that. But, general, where is it? I have a hard time reading these sometimes. Highway general maintenance, that's not it. So I took 25,000 out of the maintenance line item budget and put it into the gravel pit operating budget.
Sorry, say that again, you took,
I took 25,000
yeah,
out of the
Okay.
general maintenance budget line. Where is it?
Top
See
of
where it
page.
says
or not
materials?
top of the bottom of page 2, yeah.
Yep, so under materials,
Oh, yeah.
I took, well, actually 24,000, and I put it into the gravel pit operating expense, okay? So that would have been the gravel, Josh, that we would have been buying.
Materials there, right,
Yes.
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
So I just kind of moved numbers around a little bit,
Yeah,
okay? Made it look a little bit better. So overall, I didn't think it was too bad right now. So if you look at the total expenditures and your total revenue, that line item matches right now. And if you compare it to fiscal year 2020, it's lower.
How do you pull that off?
You know why? Because we didn't get no structures grants, so none of that money is in this
It
budget.
doesn't show up.
Okay.
Doesn't show the expense,
Uh-huh,
and it doesn't show the revenue,
uh-huh,
and the paving, same thing there.
okay,
Okay.
yeah. And when I said this number was shocking, it was just going from the 0 to the 40,000.
Yeah.
You know, that's,
Right.
but it was totally expected.
Right.
Yes,
Yeah,
it
No,
was
I-
totally expected,
yeah.
but still, looking at those
Yeah.
0, 0, 0, 0, 40,000. you know.
No, and as Karen was just explaining, the majority of that is offset
Yeah, by,
grant.
yeah,
by savings.
yeah.
right? And, you know, as was obviously part of the plan,
Mm-hmm.
over the long haul, that number will look less shocking all the
Yes.
time.
Yeah,
One other item I should throw out on the table, so you're not shocked by it. On page 5, under equipment purchase, like halfway down the page.
Yeah.
Yep.
So for 2021, we have in the budget 190,000 for a 10-wheeler dump truck.
Yeah.
So Brian is looking to trade the 2010 Mack in for a 10-wheeler.
And the 2010 Mac is not a 10-wheeler, it's a 6, is that right?
I
No.
think it's a, yeah, I don't
No.
think it is a 10, because we just bought the 10-wheeler,
Right.
what, 2 years ago?
Yeah.
So I think it's a regular dump truck.
Yeah.
And what did he tell me? I think he told me maybe 25,000 for trade-in on that. So he's working the numbers with the dealer. Did I put that note in there too?
Beer room was shut down.
Oh yeah, I didn't put it, okay.
What's that?
They're trading in beer crates right now.
If you weren't a municipality.
What's that?
If you weren't a
Right.
municipality,
I was
yeah.
just thinking personally for a second.
So
Really replaced my.
those are my notes on Brian's budget. He couldn't make it tonight. Initially, he had planned earlier in the week, but he just couldn't pull it off.
All right.
So I would suggest that you read this too, and if you have questions,
Yeah.
it's not finalized.
Yeah. So our next item is social agency appropriation requests. And I'm going to suggest, in the interest of not spending a huge amount of time on this right now, I mean, as much time as you feel necessary, Karen, to explain, but there's a lot here to digest, so I think we should all just plan on taking this home, spending some time with it.
Yes,
and-
yeah.
And then having a perhaps more meaningful discussion about it.
Yeah, and we don't have to make any decisions on that until
Exactly, yeah.
when we finalize the budget.
No, I do think, you know, as we've already talked about, we're gonna have to look at this in
Yeah.
relationship, particularly
Yeah.
in relation to Putney Community Cares. But, you know,
I have feelers out there on MuniNet,
Yeah.
so I'm waiting for responses.
On what?
MuniNet,
What's that?
UVM, they have this MuniNet site, and you go on there and you can get into certain, like I'm on town managers list, and there, people join the group, and then you can ask questions, and you get all kinds of responses, and
From
there's
different-
like zoning, and there's town clerk stuff. Yeah.
It's like a chat group for.
exactly,
Yeah.
that's exactly.
Check it out,
cool.
because
Yeah.
there's others.
Comes
like-
over email though, not like a chat.
Right.
Net.
Yep,
That's-
UVM has it.
Do you have to have access?
You create your own account.
Do you?
Yep, but they have all kinds of groups, it's not just municipal. Cool. Yeah, so you might find it.
Yeah,
Casey has some free time.
yeah, not right now, but.
That's what I was saying also as far as advertising. I mean, that's not technically through MuniNet, but there's a municipal advertising site that we advertise when we have openings.
VLCT, we can advertise.
That's through VLCT,
Yeah.
okay.
But, you know, that stuff comes, well, they use their website to advertise. But, the brochure that we get every month, it's
Right.
too late.
Right.
That comes way too late.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, so
yeah, just
essentially
review
we'll
that.
table discussion about
Yep.
this until our next meeting.
We have time.
Taylor Road property value, fair market value.
You asked the lister to come up with a fair market value on that property. And so in your packet is a lister's card and the statute for conveyance of town-owned property. And just to let you know, so this lister card is brand new. The land value on it now, because it was in the system incorrectly, is $53,800. The lister's card I had, and when I spoke to this gentleman, was $17,300.
That's a
But he
significant increase.
bought the adjacent property, which is more acreage for,
$16,500.
right.
We
That was
can't,
last year,
it was just this year,
just this year.
but that was a private sale,
Right.
so
Just trying to
everything's
put it
out
in
the window. You
perspective,
can't
right.
even compare that to anything
I was
else.
only thinking about his desire to continue to purchase this property at this value now.
No,
How much,
No.
no, just saying, how much he wouldn't, you know, seeing how he bought the property next door for 16.
but this was mistaken. So, right, you said Jordy has redone this and came up with a value of,
53,000.
No, he redid the 17 and came up with
Yes.
this.
oh, I was confused when but fair market, okay, so fair market though is not this.
No.
Right,
Thank
okay.
you, okay.
That's
so I'm
what,
trying to
that's,
get
that's
at.
the piece I was missing,
Right, yeah.
yeah.
So the assessed value is higher than fair market value per Jordy, okay? So his recommendation is $10,000 per acre. So if the town offered that piece for $20,000, that would be a good starting place.
Like 23,000.
Yeah, 10,000 per acre would put it a little over 20,000.
He said starting at 20,000 is fair.
Okay.
And we had talked at one point about how much we hadn't collected in taxes
Right.
for the years that we've had.
Yep, so it was $5,500, but I was basing that on the 17,300 number,
Got
okay?
it, okay.
Plus it was almost 7,500 just in the tax collector's deed.
Right.
So Jordy did say if we sold this property at 20,000, or in that range, within 2 years, we would make up the difference.
Because it would be on the tax rolls,
Right.
period.
Which is
Right.
a good thing. Yeah.
And
So, but this would be the, well, no, this would not be the assessed value if it were included in the other 5-acre parcel. And part of the reason that this assessed value is what it is because it,
it was incorrect in the
Well,
system.
right, but it also includes, it's a house site.
Right.
So, I mean, we see right here.
Correct.
Right.
The homestead
Yes.
value is the 53,800.
Yeah,
That's because it's greater than 2 acres, so anything that's 2 acres counts as a house site and has a base value. Our land grade is 0.8, so that shifts that down, because our base value for a 2-acre parcel, I wanna say is 65-ish, 64, something like that, so.
yeah, Jordy, he's not confident on those numbers because he uses some,
But that's essentially after,
Some schedule
for the
there.
2014 reappraisal.
yeah,
That's essentially what we came out at, was roughly 65,000 is a, it's not quite 65, but it's right in that range,
any parcel in the town of Putney that has a buildable site
Right,
has a value of roughly 60,000 because that's what that's what the base house site value is for a buildable site in Putney. Then you apply the land grade to
Right,
it,
right,
exactly, and you come up with that.
So if he buys this property and he owns the property next door and he annexes them, it all becomes, both of those properties together become one house site.
Correct.
Which makes this much less.
Exactly.
That's the idea.
That's,
right?
well, that's what, and that was the question I was asking previously about the value of 17, and I still have the same question. I mean, if this is our assessed value and we sell it for 20, he can turn around and sell it for this, because it's what it's worth.
if you can get it.
Exactly, fair market
That's-
value
yeah.
is different, and
Right.
Jordy came up with comparables,
Yep.
but we don't base our assessments on fair market value. So, I mean, I know it's not that simple,
Right, right.
but essentially we don't. We assess them based on the acreage and then a grade applied to it, et cetera.
Right,
But the taxable value of that is 53.8 because it's a buildable site.
correct.
Right.
And that's exactly what Jordy said, because you can develop that property.
Right.
But it's really, even if he did buy it for 20 and get on the tax and then sold it to someone as a building site for 53 and they built a house, that's still taxes coming into us and
Right.
at a
Yes.
higher rate. So
Yeah,
that's
yeah, yeah.
not,
Right.
none of those things are bad for us.
Well, what's bad
Except
for
for
us
that we
is
wouldn't
that
get
we
this
didn't,
value.
exactly.
Right.
And
So we have to decide
what
the risk versus the benefit.
But Jordy based his recommendation of 20, I think, on comparables, didn't he?
Yes, we had
He took sort of
three.
a real estate appraisal approach as opposed to
Yeah.
a lister's assessment approach.
Right, we
Right.
had three.
Three sales, comparable sales.
Just land.
Yeah,
And, one was like 8 acres, which another one somebody bought, it was worth like 50,000, they bought it for 100,000, so you can't even look at that one, you gotta
Right.
throw that one out the window. And then there was another one that was like an acre or something, so, I mean, we looked at them, and that's what he recommends.
Are we trying to
That's what
decide on what
he's-
to do on this
Yeah.
tonight, or are we still just talking about it?
well, I guess my question would be, okay, so what, I haven't read this yet. What did you learn from
30
this, if
days.
anything?
So
Okay,
30 days for town.
We have to post it.
Got it.
Yep,
We don't have to notify abutters,
we've already notified the abutters twice.
right?
So at this point, if we notice it to the public in the paper and do our due diligence according to the statute, and nobody comes forward, then, we already know we have 2 people interested in the property.
So the only question I have, and this does not address this, and I don't know whether it would be addressed. We have a fiduciary duty to the taxpayers to realize essentially as much income as we reasonably can from this. But we can't, at the same time, we don't want to overdo it. I guess, do we have any sort of a duty, either statutorily or ethically, to have an outside appraiser appraise it? And I think the answer is no, but I just want to make sure, based on what the conversation we've been having, if Jordy had said, you should sell it for 2,000, and we just take that recommendation, what's that based on? And are we being responsible to the taxpayers by not realizing more? And I know Jordy's not doing that, and I think 20,000 is probably in the ballpark. But if it's a $53,000 property and we're only selling it for 20, is that responsible on our part? And
I'm gonna have to talk to Larry,
yeah,
because,
As opposed, is it responsible on our part to not sell it and get it back on the tax roll?
absolutely.
Right.
Where
No,
do we-
and I'm definitely not arguing for that. I'm just saying.
No, I don't think you are. Just
We
being
have a
devil's
duty,
advocate here.
and again, that example, if Jordy said, if you sell it for 40,
you know, then we're getting closer to this, and that's, because the conflict I have with this is the fact that this also affects our CLA. I mean, if we sell this for $20,000, that shifts, I mean, I know it's a teeny number and it would not in all reality
Right.
affect our CLA much, but it does because the CLA is based on what properties actually sell for in relative to our assessed values. So this would, you know, I mean, for example, if this were the thing that pushed us over the edge and our CLA went from, you know, 91 to 89 and that forced us to have a townwide
Right.
reappraisal, that would be unfortunate. So I don't want to hold this up any more than I have to. I just think we have to, given, I don't know what we're supposed to do with this
Yeah.
and how we're supposed to determine that value. I totally trust Jordy. I'm guessing he's right, but I think we really need to do our due diligence before we choose a price.
All right, I'll talk to Larry and get some direction.
Okay, because in, you know, if you base sales in town in general, I mean, the whole concept of the CLA is to keep it, that they stay roughly within a few percent of what they actually sell for. So, you know, we're selling this for 40% of the assessed value.
Not 85 or 90%.
Exactly, which is in theory what it should be. You know, does it always work out that way? No.
Right.
And the example you gave of having one that was 50,000 and sold for 100, that
Right.
totally skews the CLA too.
Right.
It's different. You know, it takes 10 different sales in order to actually have an effect on the CLA because these are such small numbers
Right.
compared to the grand list. But, you know, the concept is that the asking price and the assessed value should be relatively close. May not apply in this situation at all,
Right.
but I think we need to.
All right, I will talk to Larry.
Thank you. And if you guys, either of you disagree with that, please feel free to.
Yeah.
No, I don't know enough to know what to do with this, I have a lot of questions, the same what you're saying.
All right. So,
All right, so then we go to the town manager's report.
all right, so I touched base
You still gotta cover that.
on, the general fund draft budget should be available on December 4th. In that, you know, I already spoke about medical insurance, wages, and minimum wage increases. Cost of living rate and the consumer index rate at this moment is 1.6%. So I expect that might change, but in the salaries right now, I have 3%. So that I may change that. Because at 1.6 right now for cost of living, a 3%, that's pretty generous.
And we can choose to do that, and at times in the past we have, primarily because of the discussion we were having earlier about wages not
Right,
being competitive, essentially. So, you know, that's one way to ease that in that direction.
right,
The other time when we have done it is when the cost of living, you know, 2008, 2009, the cost of living increase was like 0.7% or something, because that's just the way the market determined it, and we said,
yeah,
even in the worst of times, that's not appropriate for us to give that small a cost of living
Right.
adjustment. So we can determine that, but
right,
this is a good guideline for us.
yes. The other thing too is if we realign salaries, hourly salaries, the cost of living raise would not be on top of that,
Right,
okay?
right.
Just,
And, right, and, well, and that was reflected essentially, I mean, a different set of circumstances, but in what Tom said too. I
Right.
mean, you know,
Yep.
the cost of living was in addition to that,
right,
in addition to the salary adjustment.
yep,
The other thing is, you know, if I think we could feel more comfortable about using essentially, I mean, we usually listen to the state cost of living adjustment and, you know, base it roughly on that. If our wages were good and competitive, then sticking closer to that
Right.
is sort of more logical because we're not, something that
I'm
we're
glad that was
not doing otherwise.
let me just check one thing. Yes, so the consumer price index is at 1.8%.
1.8?
Yep. So,
Last year it was 1.5,
2.8.
2.8?
Yep.
I think it was 1.5.
I don't know, that's very low.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was 2.8 last year. That's a big difference though.
Yeah, it is.
Let's see what else. I'll wait for Josh to come. I just wanted to share that with you. In your packet is Wyndham County Sheriff's proposal for FY21. And it's only going up $700.
That's amazing considering what we've seen over the past couple of years.
Yeah, but you have their letter.
And what percentage does that reflect? Just out of interest, not, boy. No big percentages of.
No.
what?
No.
Looks at it,
Yeah.
Less than a percent.
Yeah.
0.1%.
Well.
So it must have
yeah.
stabilized some.
I think that reflects, I mean, what,
Yeah.
you know, what we saw a few years ago
Right.
was a huge jump in that because they hadn't adjusted it for so long.
And they lost, there was grant funding involved that was lost.
Well, that was, yes,
Yeah.
that was sort of different for the, yeah, that was a separate part of it, but they, you know, essentially they were charging 60,000 and realized whatever it was 3 years ago that they needed to be charging closer to 80,000,
Right.
so they adjusted that. And then, I mean, just as we were just talking about with our own wages, you know, if their base number is closer than the annual adjustment,
Right.
it doesn't need to be as much, so.
Right. So 1920 in the budget for sheriff was 70,000. And then
Wait, say
2021,
that again? What?
70,000
For 2020?
For
for
1920.
1920.
Oh, 19,
Yeah.
sorry, yeah.
And then 2021, it went up to 81,300.
That was, so that,
Yeah.
which was in that last year's
Yeah.
budget, right.
So, and it looks like 17, 18, it was 70,000 as well. So it looks like 2 years in a row, it level funded. And then
But
jumped.
it had, and the year previous to that, yeah, which you're right, there was grant funding, but the number, that didn't reflect that because it had passed, I don't think. But it was more like 58 or 59, and then they went to 70, and now they went to 80 2
Yeah.
years later. And now, my understanding is that 82 is much closer to what it actually cost them
Right.
to do this,
Right.
so.
So Sheriff Anderson will be at the next select board meeting on the 4th to speak to the board.
Has he come any further along with the animal control?
He's gonna talk to you about that.
Exciting.
So I've had a conversation with him. He's spoken to Westminster and we're gonna get together.
Good.
But they have to figure out a budget. So that budget needs to be, you know, that's why I let him know that we're doing budget talks now. So I don't know if it can be done for 21,
Yeah.
but he's gonna talk to us about that.
The conversation's happening.
Yeah.
It's been happening for a long time,
Right.
and we've never, unfortunately, you know, I mean, it sort of revolves, you know, they get excited about it. I mean, I don't want to jinx it at all.
Oh, this has
'cause
been
it
a
would be
cycle
great.
that I
Oh,
haven't
yeah,
seen.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, every
Well, let's hope.
3 or 4 years.
So
there's-
municipalities
Well,
might
maybe
have
we'll do
to
it.
fund
Yeah.
a portion of it.
I
And if
think
if
they would
it's-
have to.
Right,
yeah.
and if it's gonna be worth it for us, then, and I am going to that December 4th ordinance ticket workshop
Okay.
in Montpelier.
Okay.
So that's select board then, so,
Are you gonna be back in time?
no, I'm gonna have Alyssa start the meeting that way.
You woke her up.
Wait, what?
No, she should be back.
Okay.
But if you're not, don't worry.
No, I'm not gonna worry about it,
Yeah,
because the
we-
front end is, you
Exactly,
know,
we can.
it's gonna be simple. I'm waiting for numbers for the general fund budget at this point. They're not all in. Like the county tax assessment, Wyndham Solid Waste, and VLCT passive. workers' comp. So by December 4th, we should be ready to go. Landmark College, we have a billing issue that I want you to be aware of. So there's a class project for sustainability, and they were going around to all the buildings and looking at the water
All of
meters.
their buildings,
All of their buildings.
Yes. which are metered individually? Do you know?
For the most part.
Yeah.
But I gotta confirm that. That's a project that we'll be doing with Joe. So since 2015, they, in the past, were billed for flat rate water and sewer, okay?
Based on the ERUs.
And that's another thing I wanna look at, because I don't know if that's accurate. But,
I think it was based on ERUs though, wasn't it? Or is based on ERUs for them?
well, it used to be.
So.
So now they've gone to
But if they
metered,
metered, right.
metered water.
Right.
And what had happened when the meter got installed, I guess in 2015, this is Chumley A and Chumley B building, okay? Both buildings are the same size. And one meter was reading 100s, Chumley A,
Yeah.
but was
It's
being
really
billed
thousands.
1000s,
Yeah.
okay? And then Chumley B is reading 1000s and it's being billed at 1000. So when the class project was happening and Kyle got the spreadsheet, he's like, wait a minute. He goes, these two buildings are the same size. Why is this one using more
10
water?
times more water.
Yeah. So it appears
And did bank error in our favor or their favor?
I can't prove it right now, but it appears it might have been a data entry error here.
So an entry that says they were using more than they actually were,
Or they were using less than they
they
actually were.
Right, so we were billing them for more units.
Than
they were actually
using.
Yeah,
using.
so instead of hundreds, we were billing them at thousands because the meter was reading 100.
It reads in
So
gallons.
I don't know if the meter
Yes.
was put in incorrectly, because I haven't gotten a hold of the EJ Prescott rep,
Right.
and they must have paperwork.
Well, I think it's just a setting on the meter as to which it reads. I
It
don't
is a
remember.
setting, and it's a computer that you
Right.
have to go in
And
and
adjust
change
it,
it,
right.
okay? So, I'm not blaming anybody, I'm not pointing any fingers, but I think somebody should be accountable for it. And, when the meter was put in. So 4 years back, missed billing, and, yeah.
And for not once, but for 4 years. The
Yes.
duration of 4 years. Got it.
Yeah, so quarterly billing
Good.
for the last 4 years.
Good. We've been billing them perhaps for 10 times as
Yeah.
much water as they were using.
Yeah.
There is precedent for this in town. We've had this exact situation occur, actually, right here.
Well, when I came on board, Chip had mentioned, he goes, one of the projects we need to do is
Is
to make sure
Meters.
the meters are reading
Yeah.
to what we're billing.
Yeah,
And so we need to verify that. And it is a project that we're gonna get started, because Alyssa and I spoke about it, and I'm gonna bring Kim into that project. So basically, it's going through every single folder
right.
and verifying what we have in the utility billing in Nemrick.
And that's I mean, it doesn't matter how the meter's reading as long as we're,
Matching the meter.
exactly,
So I wrote down on the next log
right.
what we're billing for that meter, whether it's hundreds or thousands or gallons or whatever the
Right.
reading
Right,
that we have in the system matches what the meter says.
is doing.
Yeah,
So that
That's
that
like
is
the first
probably a
step.
DJ Prescott issue, isn't it?
I'm thinking it is. I want them to prove, when they put that meter in, what it was set at.
Right.
I did come across the piece of paper and Chumley A and Chumley B did have question marks on what to bill. But that was back in 2007.
It's interesting that has gone unnoticed for that long.
Yeah.
Well, if it wasn't for
Oh,
this
because it wasn't metered,
project.
right.
Yeah.
Well, but
Yeah.
it's also only the last 4 years.
Right, only the
which-
last 4 years. If we had
4
to go
years is
back
long,
to 2005,
2007, yeah.
yeah, because that's when they
Well,
started.
and just so this information is part of this discussion, what we have done in the past when this has occurred is that we do not typically repay that money. We credit it towards the account going forward,
Yeah, because I
So-
know it happened
right here.
right
Yeah.
here, yep.
Yeah,
Yeah, but I want to make sure too, we're gonna have Kim look at ERUs, making sure everybody is being billed
Yeah.
properly, because Chip brought it up.
yeah.
So he must have either seen something or,
Well, we
So-
also had the incidents of somebody who was connected but had
yeah,
never been being billed.
correct.
So,
And how does that happen?
Stuff falls through the cracks.
yeah, exactly.
There's a lot of things to deal with. You
Somebody
should
turns
know
it
that
on
better
and
than
doesn't
anybody.
Yeah.
relate.
But this is a good instance right here where we should re-verify and
Right.
make sure. Because, water meters get swapped out too.
Yes, and it could get changed.
It
Yeah.
could get changed.
So simple questions about the water system that I know nothing about. Are all the meters to all the places that are being billed the same kind of meter, and are they all being billed at the same gallonage or use?
No.
No.
The vast majority are not metered.
Okay.
Yeah.
The vast majority are just connections, and we base it on an ERU, which is an average use per unit.
Good. Okay.
Which is, I want to say 250 gallons a day or
It's
something.
250,
like that.
usually 210 is the
Yeah.
average, but we go with 250.
So people who feel that they use a whole lot less have the right to meter their water, and then they can still pay, they still have to pay a portion for the ERU because that's essentially their connection fee.
Right.
But then we base the volume on the
Got it.
metered amount.
So there's a bunch of different ways. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think
And some
that's
people
just-
want it metered, for somebody like Landmark, obviously having it metered is to their benefit.
Right.
For a whole bunch of different reasons.
400 times 5383 would be a lot.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it used to be based strictly on ERUs at Landmark, and then they went to all metering.
Right.
And there are other, it's usually commercial entities of some sort, whether they're multiple unit landlord situations or otherwise, that choose to
So they can control.
meter. Well,
Monitoring control too, but yeah.
Well, and at least they're informed.
Right.
If they're getting billed 5 ERUs, which would say they're using 1,250 gallons a day, and they're only using 400 gallons a day, they can then come to us and
Sure.
say, we have metered it, and we're only using this much, but we still have to cover the cost of the system, even if they're using a lesser amount.
Right.
So there's then a
Okay.
formula for that.
Right, and then it can increase the user's fees too. So
Right.
on that note though, Josh, because I do have 2 commercial buildings in town, and they want to go from flat rate. What's the difference between flat rate and metered rates for like sewer? Other than it's going to be less expensive, and what is the process?
For sewer?
Do we meter for sewer?
No, we can't meter for sewer. So you can meter your incoming, but you can't base your sewage on that because people can be, because you don't, well, and you don't know that they're not necessarily piping something in from elsewhere, so. What?
People
Yeah.
have their sewage
Yeah.
metered, like the Putney Inn.
Right,
Putney in, yeah,
yeah.
yes.
So it's water out and that's what's being metered, okay? So instead of a flat rate, they can appeal according
Right,
to
exactly.
the policy
Yes,
to have a metered rate for the
Yes.
sewer.
Yeah.
So instead of paying $164 and change times 5 ERUs, if
Right.
it's metered,
they can choose, and a good example of that, we don't have one, I don't
the
think.
co-op.
But Well, the co-op, yeah, but essentially water in would be water out for the co-op,
Right.
for the most part.
Right.
You know, if you were Rod Payne Meyer, and you have water in, and he doesn't have sewer, so this is, I'm just picking a business,
Yeah.
which would be landscaping.
Lot of plants.
Exactly, you're doing a lot of watering, so, you know, your water in, if you were metering them both, they'd be very different.
Right.
So you shouldn't have to pay for sewage based on a water meter in. That, for most places, that's the only way we can do it, unless they put in a system, as the Putney Inn did, to
Right.
meter their outgoing.
Right.
Because that difference can be huge, depending on the nature of the business.
Right, okay, so I was on the right track then, because I have 2 places in town that I've asked them, they need to appeal to you to change from a flat rate to a metered rate.
Because they have meters in place for their
Or
sewage.
they're going to put it.
Okay, or they're gonna put it in.
Yeah. They have water meter, right?
Right, the co-op,
Yeah.
they're gonna co-op.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. So they want to do the metered rate because they already have a meter on their water.
Yes.
Right, so again, the co-op would be a good example of a
Right.
business that, for the most part, water in is gonna be water out.
Right,
They don't
So-
have a, like, water garden or do any of that
Right,
crazy
right.
stuff, so, yeah.
yep.
Right.
All right, so they need to send a letter of appeal to you and then
And then we
can
have
change it.
discussion based on
Okay.
that, yes.
And just for clarity,
Sure.
it's the same meter that's used. It's 1 meter for water in, and we apply that to,
No, that's what I'm saying. I mean, the
Okay.
Putney Inn, for example, actually meters their water out.
okay,
The co-op could choose to do that because they have a, you know, basically a closed system, and they could choose to do that, and there might be a large discrepancy between water in and water out. In their situation, I wouldn't necessarily recommend that because water in and water out should be pretty darn
I
close.
was under the assumption from Joe that Putney Inn, because they don't have,
They don't have
The
water
water.
in, right?
right, they don't have our town water, they have a well.
Exactly.
That it's their,
There's a meter.
there's a
on
meter
there.
on their well.
Yes,
Oh,
So
okay.
any water in is
Yes.
assumed as water going out.
Okay, so
Right.
they don't actually meter their sewage going out. Okay.
right.
so it is 1 meter, depending on circumstances?
Yes, yeah, not, I was thinking they were water out, but you're right, that's an oddball situation.
Could meter sewer, anyway.
I don't think anybody does.
You meter the water though.
Right.
Because usually the sewer is just going out anyway, and that's water
Exactly,
pushing it
water
out.
in, water
Yeah,
out.
right, right. So 1 meter,
That tells you the water that's coming in,
right.
and you
And that
calculate
determines
the
the
water
amount of
out
water.
based
Right.
on that.
Exactly.
so its usage is what they're being
Yeah.
metered instead of a flat rate at $164.
And
But it may
where,
not be exactly like, not to be gross, but bodily fluids add to
Yes.
sewage,
Mhm.
and that's not
Yeah.
necessarily water
It's a different
in.
rate though than the water rate. So the
Right.
metered water rate is different than now when you're talking about sewer, it's a higher rate.
Okay.
Yeah, but
right,
it's-
but the volume is gonna be relatively close. No,
Right.
but that's exactly the point I'm
Yeah.
trying to make, is that
Yeah.
depending on the nature of the business
Yeah.
and the co-op, you know, yes, you're right, bodily fluid would be additional because people are coming in and using the facilities. At the same time, there's people coming in and drinking tap water, et cetera, you know,
For cooking,
reasonable.
yada, yada.
And there are we've had, somebody talked about this, I think it was SOS talking to us about this when we were originally figuring it out. And they sort of pointed out, and I don't remember the obvious examples, but there are clear examples of businesses that have a whole lot more coming in than going out, and/or have a whole lot less coming in than they have going out because they're adding, you know, so.
And didn't we use the cleanery as an example because they're
Yes, Yeah,
because they meter and they're paying much
Yes.
less than the co-op is, and so they.
In
Right.
sewer.
right.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So, yes, I mean, essentially, we are not required to do that, I don't believe. I mean, we are not, I can't remember how it reads in the policy, but yes, essentially, they appeal to us and we decide
Yeah,
whether it's a logical argument.
Yeah.
And-
Based on that argument.
it's several $100s that they're gonna save.
Yes,
several hundred.
Okay.
Because they're paying strictly for both incoming and outgoing.
They're
They're
paying-
paying ERUs,
They're-
flat rate ERUs.
Yes, correct.
Right.
And I assume that businesses and that aren't already metered have to cover the cost of installing a meter if they.
Yes.
Okay,
Yep.
when they switch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to bring that up because I'm going to direct them to make an appeal to the board,
Right,
the water sewer commissioners.
yes.
And come in front of you and request it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, yeah, just one thing to add to that, which became a big part of the discussion in the Putney Inn and wouldn't necessarily be part of the discussion for the co-op, but it's something to be aware of, is if they stop paying by ERUs and they are strictly going by metered, their reserved allotment based on ERUs adjusts to that. So if, for example, they were to decide to add apartment spaces, they would have to apply for,
Right.
and if we're at capacity and we don't have that,
Yeah,
they're out of luck.
they are.
So it's one of
Yep.
those things where if you know, essentially if you are paying by ERUs, you are guaranteed to receive that amount of water per day.
Right.
And be able to put that amount of sewage back into the system per
Yeah.
day. If you meter it, you are allotted that amount and you have to stay reasonably within that. I mean,
Right.
You know, if there's a big change, then we have
Yeah.
to review it.
Well, that's the thing, I wouldn't encourage somebody to reduce their allocation for that
Based
reason.
on that necessarily.
Right.
Unless they, unless they're very stable and assume
Right.
they're gonna be, et cetera.
Yeah,
But, you know, if the system gets maxed out and they aren't paying for
Right.
the ERU,
yep.
that's what it is.
Mhm.
So,
So front door estimates and VLCT subcontract agreement. So there was a question about a contractor maybe not having workers' comp. So the VLCT agreement, they can sign that and they're gonna be covered, okay? Right now, we have 2 estimates for the front door replacement. And one goes back to 2018, and then the other one, which is just,
so, and just, we did pass a policy, approve a policy a number of years ago, I wanna say roughly 5 years ago, stating that we will not hire we will not hire contractors that do not have workers' compensation. And just in the interest of full disclosure, I had suggested that in order to save what I think could be a pretty substantial amount of money, that the guys who work for me could do the door. I would not get paid for it. The town would pay them directly. However, if it's not going through me, they don't technically have workers' comp. So I suggested that, and then I said to Karen, oh, but wait a minute, that goes against our policy.
Well, but
So-
we have this.
but
though.
this non-employee work agreement,
We take these all the time.
yeah,
Okay,
would
This
allow
covers us,
somebody.
right, per our policy, I'm not sure we're supposed to, so we might want to find
I
that
think this
workers'
is in the policy
compensation.
that,
Is it that we can do one or the other?
yes.
I can't, that's what I wasn't sure. I
I think
wasn't
so.
sure how we, because the reason it came up, or one of the reasons it came up, was in the instance of the lawn mowing, and we had one person
Right.
who was an individual, didn't have workers' comp,
Yeah,
but we had already approved a contract with them based on the numbers, and then we implemented this policy. I know you can do this. Does it follow our policy? So we should just check what our
okay,
policy
I'll double
says.
check that.
Um,
Yeah, because basically this agreement is like the lawn mowing, if you have somebody that works for the town and can do that, then that's the person that should be doing it. But if they don't have the workers' comp, then we can use VLCT's agreement for non-employee.
It just means that they don't hold us liable if they get hurt.
Right, right.
If they're
And we don't pay workers' comp on them, is that correct? Because the other way we have done it in the past is that the town paid the workers' comp for that person.
Right.
That's the way we used
Yeah.
to do it, and that's what generated the need for the policy.
Right.
Because it was just too cumbersome to
Yeah.
be doing that.
The other thing too is when we get audited every year,
Right,
if we pay somebody and they don't have their certificate
Right.
of insurance,
then we pay workers' comp.
we get a fine.
Exactly.
Right,
That's why the policy,
yep.
that's why we decided to
Yeah.
have that policy.
But they're minimal amounts, they're not like,
Right, essentially you just pay the average amount that a workers' comp would
Right.
pay. So, but that's a choice that we need to make, and we should know what that policy says when we're
Okay.
making that choice.
so I'll look at the policy
Okay.
and, look at this again
Right,
and make sure. But, so right now, we still have 2 estimates for the front doors. One goes back to March 2018 for $11,512.74. And then the second one, which we just got on 10/15/2019, in the amount of $16,983.46. And this estimate does not include the contractor to put the doors in.
that's just fabrication of the doors themselves.
Correct.
That doesn't include windows though, is that correct or not?
That was,
Like the side
Just
gates?
doors only, exactly, because
No lights.
right,
well, no, I mean, what we talked, the first one was Cole Streeter and what Cole was proposing to do appropriately was to replace the door units with a unit and replace the windows also with
Is
units.
this who did the general stores doors?
No, well, I don't know. General stores doors when, recently? What, built the doors? No, those were built, those were donated. That was Abijah built those doors and donated them to the general store.
We should talk to Elijah.
He's not doing it anymore.
Well, that's too bad. You sure?
He
couldn't convince him?
doesn't even have a shop anymore.
Oh,
Um,
I'm sure we could find him one.
But this is sort of a special set of he's proposing replacing, which is what we asked him to give us a
yes,
bid on.
yeah,
Was to replace the doors and replace the windows with new window units. And that's the bid for that.
right.
In thinking that through further and doing some exploration, my recommendation is, and we could revisit this with Cole if we chose to, would be that all we really need, we don't need to put a whole new unit in there. We need to put 2 new doors, just the doors themselves. Some people aren't going to be interested in doing that because that's not sort of
Right.
mostly how doors come these days. And I don't think we need to replace the windows. I think we need to put storms on the windows. I mean, we
A lot
have,
cheaper.
we have storms,
Right.
or we have plexiglass on them now,
Yeah.
but we should get some storms fabricated
Right,
and apply them.
yeah,
So, to do all that, and I don't have an estimate in front of you to do that. I know, I looked it up when Karen and I were talking about it. I priced the 2 doors themselves, and they were $1,050 a piece. So that was $2,100 for purchase of the 2 doors. The windows, then you're looking at a couple guys, a couple days to put them in, kind of thing. And then a couple, maybe an additional day to put in storm windows and whatever the cost of the storm windows would be.
Right.
So it's going to be significantly less money. It's a different job than we proposed, and if we want to, I'd be more than happy to have Cole come and give us another bid. I don't know whether he's available, I don't know whether he
Right.
wants to do it, so on and so forth, or put it out to other people for bid. The other bid that we have is custom fabrication of a new unit for those, but not installation.
So apples and oranges. no
Right.
apples and
Exactly,
apples,
there's
right.
no apples and apples in any
so we
of it.
do need a couple more
In any of it.
estimates, just
Right.
to get a handle on this, so we can move forward.
So I think
But it's getting cold.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the other thing to do is, and I don't want there to be any conflict of interest at all.
Right.
If I were to order the doors, I wouldn't charge anything for them. The guys would come and do it. They bill per hour. I mean, we could come up with a reasonable, but if that feels inappropriate to anybody, I don't even want to touch it with a 10-foot pole. If it's gonna cut the cost of doing it in half, is it worth doing?
Doesn't seem inappropriate to me in any way. Save the town money, get the job done now, but yeah.
The doors are not secure the way they are right now.
Right.
So,
And we can reuse all the
Yeah.
the two big criteria are that we maintain the 36-inch opening
right,
on each door, because that's ADA compliant, we have to remain ADA compliant, which is part of what makes this more expensive, because if you're putting in a whole unit, you have to make the opening a little bit bigger in order to fit that in. The other thing is that we can reuse the hardware that's there because it's ADA, it's
Right.
good quality.
yeah, it's still
hardware.
working too.
So,
Yeah,
but I don't wanna, complicate things.
Is there any historic value to these? I
No,
haven't- okay.
these are not the original doors. The original doors were, as it is now, there's a window above the doors.
That's historic?
No, well, the original doors, there was not a window above. They were
Right.
8-foot tall doors. They were huge. I believe
Yeah.
they were almost 9 feet. They were
Wow.
big doors. And they opened, we don't want to go
They
back
were
to doing
beautiful,
No.
and it was even colder.
Yeah, exactly. And it took two men and a boy to open them.
And they would only open 9 months a year.
Yeah. But, no, and actually, in the interest of knowing that, these are probably 1950s, roughly. We had Lisa Papazian look at the historical aspect, and what we decided about that, as it is now, and this is typical of that era, the panels on the bottom go horizontal. The original doors had vertical panels, and we would go back to having 2 lights, i.e. 2 windows above 2 panels on each of the doors, which would be closer to what the historic was,
right.
but they're not. But we don't
Just
want
be
9-foot tall
reminiscent.
doors.
It
Yeah,
wouldn't-
exactly. But those are,
My vote is to
Those are-
do it and get it done and do it as cheap as possible. That's how I feel about it. And I have no feelings about that. I have no problem.
I definitely-
Very confident at all.
Don't want to spend a huge amount on doors, considering we're talking about really expensive fire trucks and the highway department needing another truck, and so if we can get
Yes,
it
of
done.
course, there are
at a
different
reasonable-
categories of expensive.
Yes, it's different
but-
categories of expensive, but weighing every dollar, I feel like if we can
So,
reduce.
Minimize
Yes.
costs.
I'm with you
so
on that.
I would say, and again, I would
You're
not.
on camera now.
I know, no, and I would say, I just wouldn't charge, I would just, if the town would pay for it directly, it can run through my account, so it gets the discount, so on and so forth. But we need to check that policy. So what I would suggest is, if Karen finds that it's appropriate for us to hire those guys and it adheres to our policy, then we should go ahead and get the doors ordered and get things
Okay.
rolling.
Yeah.
And I can, before we actually do that, I can tell you pretty accurately what it would actually cost. But it's gonna be half of the existing
Right.
lowest bid, probably somewhere in there.
Yeah,
right?
something on paper would be
Yeah,
appropriate.
I've asked him, but,
Just tell me what
Do
day
you
they're
want me
gonna
to
come
call?
install, so everyone else knows.
It's very
Doors are gonna be wide
important. You only have one female right now complaining. Now, if you get another one or two,
ooh, she's the complainant?
Oh, Kim is too.
oh, is she?
She says she has to buy sweaters for her sweaters.
It is cold in here,
Yeah,
so.
Well, you turn the heat up and it gets super hot,
yeah.
but then it
Well, it does this.
cools right down and then it like heats right up and it
Yeah,
cools
by
right
2
down.
o'clock in the
It's like-
afternoon, it's like, where's the heat? What happened to the heat?
Well, some of those days, we've had some cold days, and
Yeah,
unfortunately, the doors are only gonna help so much with that. The reality is, a large part of that problem is just the lack of insulation.
right. In front of you, and you can review on your own time, is a draft personnel policy. We can talk more about it in another meeting.
Great.
There might be some slight changes to it, but I'll keep you posted. if-
We had a personnel, excuse me, we already had a personnel policy. This is a revamping of our
Oh, this
existing
is
pers-
like almost a total revamp because
The other one
there,
was 3 pages.
The other one was
3 pages
a
long.
little outdated.
yeah, there
okay.
was, there's a lot of regulations,
I'm sure.
labor
Yeah,
laws that
yeah.
we didn't have in the old ones.
Yeah,
You know, like Family Medical Leave Act
Right.
and all that stuff.
yeah.
So I think it went from like, what, five
Like
pages
3 to 5 pages.
25?
Can I make a recommendation? This should be something to go through equity and inclusion.
That's not unreasonable. Yeah.
And I think in its form right now would be okay
Yeah,
to get it started.
yeah,
And then if I make any changes, I'll let you know.
okay,
And then you can bring it.
okay.
Side note on that though, is that we are trying to get it like approved before the first of the year, right?
Before the first of the year.
Yeah.
Okay, they meet again in
To coincide
the
with-
first Thursday of December, so.
So just have to be, I mean,
Although the board has already agreed to go bi-weekly.
Okay. So we don't really need it.
So
to go weekly.
we're,
What?
no, we're being paid weekly right now. We're gonna go bi-weekly.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Oh, I see what
So-
you're talking about paying. Yeah, yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
And we talked about that.
that's one of the reasons you're
Because it's
thinking.
in here
Right.
and it wasn't before.
Right.
Yeah, no, so
Yeah.
we don't, but that doesn't need to be in the policy. I mean, it needs,
It will
we
be in
need
the
to make that
policy.
decision, exactly.
Yeah, it will be in the policy,
Yeah,
but we had the conversation about going bi-weekly because it was gonna be less expensive outsourcing
right, yeah,
for payroll.
Do you have a PDF of that?
I can make a PDF, it's
Or-
in Word right now.
Okay.
Yeah,
It's
I'll
in
email
Word,
it to you, okay?
yeah.
Great.
And I would just, not that you already, or aren't already aware of that, but the vast majority of this, or, well, I don't know about the vast majority, but a large portion of it is probably statutory.
Yeah.
So, you know,
It is now because Alyssa did a lot of work.
right, that's what I'm
Yeah.
saying, on
Yeah.
a revamp
Yeah.
one.
It's referenced, you know.
Right,
Yeah.
so, but, you know, if equity and inclusion wants to make any recommendations for
Right,
changes,
right.
it would obviously have to fall within statutory
Yes,
requirements. So
yeah. Yeah.
just,
Something they touched on at their first meeting was that if there was something that was statutory that they felt was egregious in any way, then maybe they would pass that on to us and ask that it was passed on to the state as well.
that's fine, yeah. No, and the other thing that came to my attention about the meeting was that there was some discussion of what the circumstances would be that committee would go into executive session. And I just, if it wasn't made clear in that meeting,
It was.
they will never go into
Yeah,
executive
it
session.
was.
Okay, so, there's no reason, nobody other than the quasi judicial boards of the town
Yeah,
by statute can go into.
Jonathan's
executive
doing a really good
Good job
job
of
of,
keeping-
yes,
good.
of
Good.
helping folks understand.
session. Yeah, no, and I think that, you know, it's a perfectly reasonable question, especially sort of in that setting, but it's just sort of straight up, no, that would not ever happen, so. Okay, so where are we?
Vacation.
Jonathan handed me this,
Vacation.
I know.
You're there.
Jonathan handed me this,
Oh,
the results
Oh, I was gonna
of
bring that up, I'm glad that came up.
the voting, so you can take a look at that. He said 195 people from Putney voted.
yep, that's actually a respectable number.
Yeah, yeah. There's only 26 that voted on the actual budget, so that
We're taking bets
195
on how
is
many
good.
people it would be. Interesting.
Yeah. So he's sharing that with the board. And then I just want to reel off some vacations that are coming up here. So we are closed on November 28th and 29th. And then I will be taking vacation from the 25th through the 27th, with the 28th and 29th off. Brian?
November?
Yes.
So the whole
Yeah,
Thanksgiving.
that whole
will
week,
be-
yep. Brian and Jason will both be out from November 22nd through the 27th with the 28th and the 29th off, depending on weather.
22nd through 27th? Okay.
Yeah, which is Friday.
Friday through the
Yeah.
Okay, so it's
Wednesday.
not, yeah.
Lenny will be in charge when Brian and Jason are on vacation. And then Tom is scheduled to take December 2nd through the 6th, so he'll be back on December 9th.
Good.
And just, I'm assuming, I don't think this is likelihood based on what I've seen, but if we were to have a big storm during the time that both Brian and Jason are gone.
They'll come home.
Okay,
He did that last year,
okay.
so.
Hopefully that wouldn't be.
Where's
the
it
case.
hunting?
It snowed like the
They're in
second
Maine.
weekend.
We're going to Maine,
Yeah,
up in Jackman or near Jackman.
yeah.
Good.
So I just wanted to alert you that we do have people out. So Alyssa will be like, when I'm out,
She'll be driving truck and
yeah.
running the
Yeah.
office.
And there's some
should be.
brush at the end of my back, we gotta come pick up.
I'll just light it on fire.
Okay,
Sorry, I
so,
should've said
All right, so moving on.
warrant, so are you done? You're done
I
with
am
your
done,
report? Okay,
yes.
warrants
Thank
to
goodness.
the
I
treasurer.
know, right?
I move to accept and execute the warrants upon completion of review.
I second that.
Been moved and seconded to accept and execute the warrants as presented upon review. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Payroll warrant, November 15th, includes the library, $9,119.17.
Stay here much longer, I'll be down for breakfast.
Did you call your order in yet?
Oh, absolutely.
What are you having?
I'm having salmon.
Nice.
You got 5 minutes. if
You
want
are
me to put in another.
you are on your vacation, aren't
I am. I've worked every day until tomorrow morning. But anyway,
Payroll warrant dated November 22nd, 2019, in the amount of $6,541.55.
I didn't forget anybody this time.
No, because I made sure. We had that conversation, remember? Oh. Accounts payable dated November 9th through November 22nd, 2019, in the amount of $101,499.62. All of the social agencies are in this warrant, which was about 40-something thousand. And then everything else is just regular. $48,399. How's
For
that?
social.
Yep,
It was a little less because a couple of them I paid last time.
correct.
All right, do we have any other business?
I have none.
Anybody else?
I'd like to have an executive session.
Oh, sure.
Yay!
Would you like to invite us?
Yeah, no, you got, yeah.
We can go.
Wants hers at home.
Who's invited?
We don't need an executive session, I don't believe, do we?
We don't,
Okay.
no.
All right, and our next meeting date is December 4th,
Correct.
right here, same bat channel, same bat room. All right, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.